All right, so financially successful. Who wants to be financially successful? Here's what I mean. Thank you for waving. That was more of a rhetorical question, but thank you. Here's what I mean by financial success. Here's what I don't mean. I don't mean that you're going to become a bazillionaire, a gazillionaire, a multi-billionaire. You can, that's fine. But financial success in the kingdom does not mean that. What I do mean is that you will have more than enough at your disposal. This is God's will for each and every one of us, I believe, especially if you live in a Western context. I believe that it's God's will that you have more than enough at your disposal to do what the Lord has called you to do in terms of your calling and your purpose in life. So you're able to meet all of your financial needs, the basic needs that you have, and you have more than that in order to be generous and to do everything else that the Father is calling you to do. I believe that's what financial success is. It also includes taking care of your family and leaving a legacy for your children's children. I first came across this when our friend Stephen Long, he said that based on a proverb in the book of Proverbs that says, a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Not just for his kids, but he has, God is such a generational God. It's not just about my individual life right now or your individual life. If you have a family, if you have children, part of your dreaming and thinking and planning must include leaving an inheritance and a blessing for not just your kids, but their kids. And that's what Steve and Sandra have sort of modeled with their life, and it's been a blessing to Elsie and me to see that. And so in order to become financially successful, by the definition I'm giving to you, having more than enough, you've got to have these three things that I'm going to be talking to you about today. There is no other way to be financially successful as a son or a daughter of King Jesus than by following these three keys. And I'm going to suggest to you that you want to start implementing these keys today, if you haven't already been doing them. All right? On a sort of a whim, actually led by the Spirit, I went to, I think it was Grok, it doesn't matter, I went to AI, one of those AI tools, and I said, how many people in Canada, because everybody in Canada in this moment in time is under some kind of financial strain, it feels like. At least the media is telling us that, right? So I want to find some objective proof of what's happening. So Grok, or Perplex, whoever it was, I forget which one, I said, come on, tell me right now, in the name of Jesus, tell me right now, how many people in this country are actually living paycheck to paycheck? But paycheck to paycheck means that you just barely are squeaking by with the income that you have for the month, and by the end of the month, you're completely drained. Or, depending on your pay cycle, whether it's 2 weeks or a month, whatever. How many people are living? And of course, it's a very difficult thing to quantify, because the questions are hard to answer, and people have different responses because of different meanings, okay? But here's what I've come to work with. Between 45 and 62% of Canadians right across this nation, and it's higher in Ontario, it's higher in the bigger provinces, Ontario, BC, and Quebec. But between 45 and 62% of every person is living paycheck to paycheck in this country. This is a developed country, everybody, supposedly a developed country. around 50% of Canadians live with revolving debt. You know what I mean by revolving debt? Credit card debt. You're living off of your credit cards or your line of credit. 50%, half. So there's 10 people in this room. 5 of us are living off of necessity. Well, let me clarify that. By choice. It may not be by necessity, but the way that you're living your life off of your credit card or your line of credit. And if you're in that boat, I actually know the feeling. Because there was a period of time when I lived with heavy debt on my credit card. Very bad. As an accountant and somebody who loves Jesus, it was a very, very bad way to live my life. I actually brought debt, substantial debt, into our marriage. Elsie has never ever had one single iota of debt. But I brought debt into our marriage. And fundamentally, speaking for myself, the reason why that happened was because I made some presumptive choices. I thought they were faith-based choices. Well, that guy can God, he decided to go to Israel, and God supplied all of his needs to go to Israel. God made sure he got enough for the ticket and for the hotels, and for all his expenses were covered. Therefore, God's going to do the same thing for me. Therefore, I went ahead and I planned for a trip to Israel without having any kind of financial recourse. So I ended up not living by faith, but by credit card. Some people say I'm living by faith, they're actually living by Visa. I do have to say, though, and the person's in the room, so I'm not going to go any further there, but God used one of you in this room to sow a seed which in a supernatural, and I underline the word supernatural, way God provided for us to be out of debt, like a substantial debt, within less than a year. Mercy of God, grace of God, tender mercies of Jesus. Can somebody say hallelujah for the tender mercies of Jesus? Even when we blow it, even when we make a huge mistake, even when we're presumptuous, we cry out to God for mercy, and he responds, and he helps us out. And that's what happened to us. Within 1 year, we were completely debt-free, and we haven't been in debt since that time. However long ago that was, 2010, I think. I want to suggest to you, friends, that there is a better way to live. Biblically speaking, there's a better way to live, especially if you are a devoted follower of Jesus. So, point number 1, 3 keys to financial success. Key number 1, be content, everybody. Be content. We're living in a world, a heavy materialistic world with glitz and glamour, and everywhere you turn, you got to have this in order to be somebody. You got to wear this. You got to have this kind of car. You got to have this kind of house. There's continually a bombardment of thoughts through advertising and a whole bunch of other means that are screaming at us. You got to have this in order to really be content. I know I'm just speaking to myself and nobody's really, so you can eavesdrop on my internal dialogue, okay? We sang this song this morning. Jireh, you are enough. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, Jireh, are you really truly enough? Do we pay attention to the songs we sing? Jireh, you are enough. Regardless of what my circumstances may look like, regardless of what's happening around me relationally, financially, health-wise, every other circumstance in life, Jesus, are you sufficient? Are you the one who's able to provide for me? Are you able to provide the ram in a Thank you. My Guyanese accent was coming out there, man. Use a ram in a ticket. Shikabungu. Here's what the great Apostle Paul, who knows what he's talking about, here's what he said to Timothy, his protege, the guy he was raising up, called him his son. But godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with contentment. Godliness meaning, God, I'm choosing this today to live according to your ways. Godliness, therefore I'm going to be content. I'm going to live a godly life, and therefore I'm going to be content in it. Godliness with contentment is great gain. There's a lot of peace, there's a lot of rest, there's a lot of security on the inside when you're living as best as you know how, a way that honors Jesus, and you're content in that. For we brought nothing into the world. And you're thinking, this is the guy who wrote this 2,000 years ago. You mean they struggled with materialistic things as well? What the hey? I thought it was just us. I didn't think it was, Middle Eastern guys 2,000 years ago. It's the human condition, everybody. It's the human condition. You can be living in Toronto, Canada. You can be living in the slums of Mumbai, India. You can be living in the favelas of Sao Paulo. There's something on the inside of us that wants to fill that vacuum, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, apart from God. With godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, and I have to add, Paul, we live in Toronto, Canada, in the middle of winter, so we need food, clothing, and shelter. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap into, Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. What's Paul saying to Timothy? Timothy, as you're living your young life, leading a church with all kinds of stresses on you, the temptation is to find comfort, to find answers, to fill you, the inside of you with something else apart from God. Material needs, material things. If I had a few more shekels, maybe I'll be happier. Maybe I wouldn't have to be dependent on other people as much, right? Philippians 4:11-13. Paul again says, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Do you see the context of that verse, by the way, of that little sentence that we all splash on our sneakers, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Therefore, I can win this basketball game or this football game. The context of that verse is whether I'm in want, whether I'm in plenty, I am content because I can do all things through Christ who gives me. It's the grace of God that enables me to live the way he wants me to live. In plenty or in want. It's the grace of God. It's the grace of God. Everybody say the grace of God. I need the grace of God every single day, every single moment, and every single moment of every day. Living with contentment, friends, as I began to say, guard against greed and envy and comparing yourself to the Joneses. That's an old English expression, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, that guy has a pretty cool thing. I need to have one of those. I got to have the latest iPhone. That was my thing, man, in the early days when iPhones first came out. Within 2 days, everybody, within 2 days, I was in Houston, Texas. Within 2 days of the first iPhone coming out, I had one in my pocket. What do you think I felt like? Look at me. I got the brand new. No, do you have an iPhone? No, I have an iPhone. Do you? Yeah. Well, I'm somebody. Consumerism, man. Listen, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. There's nothing inherently wrong with having nice things, good things, okay? But I'm saying, don't let it get into your heart. Don't make it an idol. Don't make this the source of your contentment. Make Jesus the absolute source of your contentment. I'm doing this. Most of you know I'm doing a course I'm teaching a course on church history. So I'm reading all these things, and I'm reminded of this St. Augustine of Hippo in North Africa. He was in North Africa, and St. Augustine, and even today, 2,000 years after, we still make reference to this guy who's written some amazing statements. One of them was, you have made us for yourself. He's talking about God, of course. Sorry, that's very tiny. Are we going to get bigger things at some point? What are we going to do? One big thing or a bunch of smaller ones? 2 screens. Okay. We have made us for yourself, O Lord. You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you. Augustine of Hippo knew what he was talking about, okay? Because he was from an aristocratic family, wealthy family in North Africa, and he was well educated. He was educated in rhetoric. He was like a brilliant speaker, right? He went to school to be an amazing speaker and to be able to think logically and all that good stuff, like a philosopher of today, okay? But he was smart, bright guy, but he was also a womanizer. He used to mess around, and this is documented. He messed around all the time. When he got saved, he realized, man, all those things that I was after, right? My heart was restless, trying to find rest in women and booze and fame and fortune. But my heart continued to be restless until I found my rest in you. He knows what he's talking about. And God so blessed this man's life that even today, every single branch of the church, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, even the new ones, we still read stuff that St. Augustine wrote a long time ago. A friend of mine was a very successful businessman, okay? Very successful. He's done very, very well for himself. But in his early days, the Lord, in his journaling with the Lord, he says, God, I feel you've called me to be a Joseph, to be a supplier for, with wealth and everything else. And God said to him, I can only put money into your hands if you would take it out of your heart. Don't make money the source of your security. Don't make money an idol. By money, I mean all the trappings of money, okay? The fame, the security that comes with it. Let Jesus Christ be your absolute source of contentment. So key number one, if you want to be successfully financially, if you want to be financially successful, I'm going to offer you this. Learn to be content. How do I move this thing forward? There we go. Okay, next one. Be generous, everybody. Be generous. Here's what Proverbs 3, 9-10 says. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. You can read the scriptures from beginning to end. Whenever the Bible is encouraging us to be generous, to be giving, to honor God with your money, it always comes with a promise. It's conditional. If you honor God, in this case, if you honor God with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops, then your barns, if you do this, then this will happen. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. So and this is just one of a million verses that I can refer to speaking about how we make use of the things that God has given to us. The earth is the Lord's, everybody. Psalm 24:1. Remember, we were focused on Psalm 24 a couple of years ago. Psalm 24 starts off by saying, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Which means that whatever you have has been given to you by the Lord. With your first fruits, Ian mentioned that earlier, with your first fruits of all your crops. You don't want to give to God the leftovers. You don't want to tip God, okay? First thing you want to bless God with, because there's a bunch of different reasons. First of all, it's a statement of faith. When you determined to give, I'll tell you what's a lie actually. Here's what we used to do before I began to give off my credit card. What I used to do for the longest while was, as soon as I get my paycheck every 2 weeks, automatically 10% of what I earned was put into an account, and it was easy because it was the church I was working for. It would come in, and immediately 10% would go back to the church. And of course, things changed, and I began to use a credit card for my giving. And I'm only saying that as my testimony. I'm not recommending anybody to give off their credit card. I give off my credit card because I get points, and it matters in terms of stuff. Okay. So what happens is it's automatic. I set up my thing on PushPay, Planning Center, and every Sunday, 10% of every second Sunday, I should say, 10% of my income comes back to this church. I've already told you 101 times already. Elsie, before we got married, she used to give way more than was warranted, humanly speaking, from her income. She used to have a Jewish accountant before I came along, and every year when he was doing her taxes for her, he would complain that she's giving way too. Why are you giving so much money for? It's not benefiting you tax-wise. Of course, he didn't get our point of view, her point of view about giving. Generosity, friends, breaks the fear of lack. When COVID first hit, I'll give you this illustration. When COVID first hit, and we didn't know what was going to happen, is our church going to survive? Are we going to have any money coming in? All those unknown questions at the time, no answers. I felt this fear coming in. What's going to happen to us? And so we prayed together, Elsie and I, and we determined that we're going to come in the opposite spirit. This temptation to be filled with the fear of lack. So we determined, we're going to give, and we're going to give generously. And so we began to deliberately give money to other people, buy things for other people deliberately, so that we broke the temptation, we broke the spirit of a fear of lack that was attempting to invade our hearts and our minds. Generosity breaks the fear of lack. It multiplies blessings, as we've just read, and reflects kingdom values over self-interest. Here's what it says in 2 Corinthians 9, 6-7. Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion. Not reluctantly or under compulsion. Don't let any preacher standing right now in front of a microphone try to create an impression in your heart or mind that you're under pressure to give. If you feel that pressure, don't give. Only give when you've settled in your heart, this is what I want to give. This is how I want to give. This is how much I want to give. For God loves a cheerful giver. And I bet you some of you have heard, preachers say this word cheerful, the root word in Greek is hilarious. So God wants you to give hilariously. Well, when you give, you don't have to be happy, clappy, and laughing. And God wants, there has to be a liberality of heart. There's a freedom on the inside when you're giving. You're not giving under pressure, man. You're giving because this is what I want to do. This is what I feel called to do. You follow? You follow? And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things and at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Don't you love how the Bible makes it so full of promise and hope? Listen, everybody, even in the Old Testament, because there's always a question, everywhere you turn, there's always a question, for Christians, for New Testament believers, for the New Covenant, do we have to be tithing as well? Are we obligated to tithe? Here's my answer. Even in the Old Testament, tithing sometimes, some years, was more than 10%. Right? Some years you had to give as much as 22% of your income. Did you guys realize that? In the New Testament, Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 48. You remember that beautiful passage, that summary passage that kind of outlines what the early church looked like in the first nascent, brand new days of the church in existence. Pentecost falls, Peter preaches, 3,000 people are saved, and this is what the church looked like in that moment. And it says that they gave so that nobody had any lack. Nobody had any need. People would sell their homes. That's more than 10%, everybody. You're selling your home. Homes, some of them. Right? It's more than 10%. I wonder if some people ask today if tithing is for New Testament believers. I wonder if I don't know, you tell me. I wonder if they're asking that question because they don't want to give. If you're asking the question, is tithing for today or not, and your motivation is because I don't want to give, then you're actually asking the absolutely wrong question. Because in actual fact, frankly speaking, you're meant to give more than 10%. If you want to be a New Testament believer, you give more than 10%. 10% is the baseline. We're looking for the grace line. We have a greater covenant than the Old Testament covenant. So no, you don't have to give 10%. You don't have to tithe. You got to more than tithe. That's Elsie and my goal ever since we got married. And my goal before, and obviously Elsie was doing it even though it wasn't her. She didn't sit and think about it, but she actually is giving more than 10%. But it's our goal to give more than 10%. Not just to this church, our storehouse, but however the Lord leads us. Listen, everybody. God's promise is He will take care of your business if you take care of His. I've read you 3 or 4 verses already, all of them filled with a promise that God will supply all your needs. I love, whenever we talk about money and these things, somebody always has to give a nice juicy testimony, right, of how God, and I have one juicy testimony. A bunch of years ago, we were at the airport church, and Bill Prankard, does anybody know who Bill Prankard is? He was an evangelist across Canada, and he did a lot of his work. His ministry continues to do a lot of work in the Arctic with the First Nations, the Inuit, and so on up north. And so he was at the airport church for a week of preaching, and then one of the nights he was doing an offering call to give money to his work up north. And Elsa and I had just come back from Sweden. Yes, that's right, just come back from Sweden, 2008. And so we were sitting in the second row. It's me, Elsie, and our friend June Bain. And so, as we often do, Elsa and I looked at each other. How much should we give? And she prayed, I prayed. We got the same number. We wrote down the number. So I filled in the envelope. And as the bucket is coming, okay, it wasn't a lot of money. It was $100. Come in. I put the envelope in, $100. As it passed by, June Bain put some money into the envelope, into the bucket, and then she gives us a check. 10 times what we just gave. Like this. I just put it in the box, into the bucket, It goes to Elsie, it goes to June, and then June gives us a check. 10 times what we just gave. Isn't that amazing? Well, I thought it was amazing. Maybe I didn't tell it to you the right way, but anyway, doesn't matter. The point is, you can never outgive God, everybody. You can never outgive God. Turn to your neighbor and say, you can never outgive God. And the way that God provides isn't just like the juicy testimony I just gave to you. There's a whole bunch of ways that God is able to meet our needs. Elsie has an uncanny ability to find deals, everybody. She can find, I'm the big ticket spender in the family, okay? But she's the one who's able to find incredible deals. God is more than able to provide, and He's such a creative Father that He does it in a whole bunch of different ways. And sometimes He does it in ways that we don't even acknowledge or notice. Press that thing, there you go. Okay, so those are 2 heart things. The first thing is be content. That's a heart thing. Give generously. That's a heart thing. Heart orientation, to be generous. Now I'm going to get a little bit practical, a little bit. This is not a financial seminar, but I'm going to give you a little thing. Be a good steward. Can you read that? Be content, be generous, be a good steward of God's resources. Don't cheat. Don't cheat on your taxes. We live if you're an employer, an employee, or a business person, the context in which you live in today's world, there are many, many examples of people who are cutting corners, who are giving half what is promised, messing around, lying, cheating, just to get ahead, okay? As a believer in Jesus, I believe you don't have that option. I don't have that option. The only option I have is to live as honestly and as forthrightly as I possibly can. And by the way, that can end up being a tremendous witness to people in your world. If you demonstrate what honesty is, even when it hurts, even when it hurts. So don't cheat. Because those who are faithful in little will be faithful in much. That's a biblical principle we can live by. Second thing is work like you know that Jesus is watching. Work like you know that Jesus is watching. That's what it says. I'll just read this from the Bible. This is in Colossians, by the way. I failed to put down the reference, but it's in Colossians 3. Slaves, obey your earthly masters. Obviously, we're not talking about slaves in our context right now. He was writing in a context where the labor force was primarily slaves, right? The 99% of the labor force in those days were slaves. So we're not that. We're employees and employers. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when their eyes are on you and to curry their favor, to get on their good side, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord. Here's another promise. You will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. Jesus is watching everybody, and he's on the edge of his seat, waiting to reward us for our faithfulness, for our hard work, for our diligence. Working as though, whatever job we're doing, working as though we're doing it unto him. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Okay, finally, save and invest. If I had to do my life over one more time, this would be the most significant change I would make. Because in my early days of being a believer in Jesus and being involved in missions, the first half of my life, by the way, I lived by faith, which meant I lived in poverty on the mission field. But if in my 20s and 30s, if I knew how significant it was to learn the principle of saving and investing, my life today would be dramatically different. So as an old man, young people in this room, as an old man, I'm telling you, I'm encouraging you, be serious, be intentional about saving. Be intentional about saving and investing if you learn some principles of investing. But save and invest. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Live within your means, everybody. Live within your means. I'm giving you gold now, everybody. For the last, how long have I been talking? An hour? I'm giving you the best gold I know how to give or what to give. This is not just for your life right now. It's for your future as well. It's for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Some of you 50 years from now. Most of us, I don't have that length of time. Be intentional about how you manage your resources that the Lord has put into your hands. Create a budget. Create a budget. You don't have to be pernickety. What's the word I'm trying to say? You don't have to, every single cent. I know there are people who keep track of every single cent. And if that's your makeup, fine. But most of us aren't like that. But at least know how much money is coming every month so that you know how much you can give, how much you can tithe, how much you can give, how much you can save, how much you can invest, and how much you can spend. Know those things. It is wise to save. It is foolish to be trapped in consumerism and to live with a revolving debt like half our population is doing right now. Okay, to wrap this up. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. The scriptures, as I've tried to indicate to you, the scriptures, the verses I've used, and there are many other verses, frame or show that finances are given to us so that we can, God owns it. God owns the finances. God owns the cattle on 1,000. God owns it. He's giving it to you to co-partner, or to partner with him, to steward what is given to us so that his purposes in partnership with us can be fulfilled, whatever those may be, for your life individually. Okay? You getting the point I'm trying to make? So success flows from aligning money with God's purposes of contentment, generosity, and provision for others, rather than wealth accumulation alone. It comes when we align our time, our talents, and treasures to the Lord's purposes with contentment, generosity, and good stewardship. So finally, which one of these three keys do we need to work on this next season of our lives? Which one of these three keys? Do I need to be more content in my heart of hearts with the Lord? Is Jesus my everything? Is Jireh really enough? Is he really enough? Contentment, generosity, and being a good steward of our lives. Which one of these three keys do we need to work on this next season of our lives?